All right, let's move on to this Ja Morant thing for a minute. So obviously this came out while we were recording the show last night, so we didn't have a chance to really react to it. But okay, so Ja Morant goes on Twitter and shares out this video of like Jordan Poole seemingly pulling on his knee while he's planted. I didn't see another angle of this video where it doesn't look so much like he pulled as much as his hand was just there and Ja's knee kind of buckled a little bit. It's hard to say, and obviously Ja Morant ends up deleting the tweet. You have Memphis's coach come out and basically insinuate that it might have been done intentionally. Obviously Jordan Poole comes out and says, I was going for the ball. It's your textbook he said type of situation, right? Now, my initial interpretation is, obviously it's possible that that Jordan Poole pulling on Ja Morant's knee was responsible for the issue. But there was also a play earlier in the game where Ja Morant was closing out on a shooter on the three-point line on the left wing and appeared to slam his knee, the same knee, into the shooter as he was going by. So that very well may have called it. It also could have been an issue he's been dealing with for a while. We don't know. But the bottom line is like there's a gray area in some of these things, and then there are like clear black and white type of issues. To me, the Dillon Brooks issue was so black and white. Clearly knocking the dude out of the air, clearly attempting to hard foul a player that was flying. It was obviously a dangerous play. To me, that was so cut and dry, has to be ejected, has to be suspended, super dirty, have absolutely no respect for that player, anything involved in it, right? Then there's, like, if I'm ranking the dirty fouls in the series, that's a clear number one. Then there's a significant drop-off to the Draymond thing. The Draymond thing was dangerous. Hit a guy in the face. I thought he loaded up and did it on purpose. And then he dragged Brandon Clark out of the air. However, it was clear that Draymond was trying to gather Brandon Clark so that he wouldn't make the layup and get an and one. It was dangerous. I thought it deserved the ejection, but it was a clear, significant level below the Dillon Brooks thing because he was obviously not branching into that very, very, very dangerous play that Dillon Brooks did on Gary Payton Gary Payton II. So I thought there was a clear delineation between those two. To me, the Jordan Poole thing is even further below the Draymond thing. One, I've played in a shit ton of basketball games in my life, and I've played against dirty players. I have never, ever, 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 ever seen a player do anything remotely similar to that. Grabbing a guy's knee while it's planted and trying to pull it out of whack. I've never seen that before. And so because of that, to me, it's kind of like a benefit of the doubt type situation. We're looking at Jordan Poole, a player who does not have a history of making dirty plays. To me, these series are so physical with the way guys are grabbing arms and shoulders to get leverage on people, right? Like the chicken wing is an example. Like, to me, it's like a swim move. A defensive end tries to get around an offensive lineman by kind of like swimming around him, right? I thought Jordan Poole was trying to pull himself closer to Ja to try to get a hand on the ball. I didn't think it was intentional. Was there a chance that it was intentional? Yes, but we can't jump to that conclusion. To me, it was safe to jump to that conclusion with Dillon Brooks because it's a play we've seen often in basketball history. It's a play we know is dangerous. We know it's so dangerous that it's an unwritten rule amongst basketball players that you're never supposed to do that. This is an entirely different situation. I hope Ja's okay. I hope he's able to play tomorrow. We don't know. There was reporting that he might not play. I hope he's able to play. To me, the Ja knee situation is a separate topic from the Jordan Poole situation because I don't think it was intentional. But for the sake of the series, obviously I hope they come back. Obviously I hope he plays. One last note. Do not count out Memphis if they don't have Ja. Are they a lesser team? Yes. Would I favor Golden State? Yes, but I was going to favor Golden State even if Ja was at 100%. The thing is there's a reason why Memphis was so successful this year with Ja off the floor. And it had a lot to do with the fact that Ja was their weakest defensive player. They were about 5.9 points per 100 possessions better on defense without Ja this year. As a result, they actually had a better net rating without Ja this year. As I said so many times on the show, I don't translate that to the playoffs because in the playoffs, elite high-end shot creation becomes so much more valuable. So I'm obviously going to heavily value Ja in that predicament. Just look at this series. Nobody on Memphis can create a shot except for Ja, right? So I don't think the Memphis Grizzlies are better without Ja. However, they are a different type of good team without him. They go to another big wing usually. in that role. They become much bigger, much more athletic in terms of like their overall size and athleticism profile of the lineup. Ja Morant is a freak athlete, but he's not a freak athlete on the defensive end of the floor in terms of like covering a ton of ground and keeping guys in front and that kind of stuff. So Memphis becomes a better defensive team. They become more imposing physically without Ja Morant. So that is their opportunity to try to drag out this series, is go big without Ja and just try to physically dominate Golden State. Still am picking Golden State. I still think Golden State now, with Ja out, if he does end up missing the series, Golden State's going to win this series in 5 games, I believe. But it's still going to be an interesting game. I still expect it to be a dogfight because Memphis doesn't become a bad team without Ja. They just become a slightly lesser, different team at that point. All right, before we get out of here today, I wanted to quickly touch on some of the metrics from yesterday's Celtics-Bucks game. Obviously, this is something I've been keyed in on all series, particularly the difference between the way the teams are performing in half court versus in transition. So much of this comes down to Boston's offensive decision-making. It controls the pace of the game. We talked about this a lot in last night's show, but all the data tells us that Boston is a significantly better half-court team, but Milwaukee has managed to steal 2 games in transition. Like, that's where this whole series has been determined. To give you an idea, so for the entire series, in transition, Milwaukee is averaging 1.41 points per play, compared to Boston averaging 1.024 points per play. So literally, Milwaukee is winning this series in transition, and it shows in the stats. They won game 1. They were 20 points better than Boston in fast break points. They lost game 2. They were even in fast break points. They won game 3. They were 10 points better than Boston in transition. They are winning this series in transition. In the half court, Boston has consistently been the better team. Obviously, they were the better team in the first 2 games. We talked about that. But the question was, if we go to Milwaukee, will Milwaukee's half court offense get better? No, it actually has been worse. It was worse in Milwaukee than it was in the first 2 games. So in yesterday's game, Milwaukee averaged 0.76 points per half-court play. Boston averaged 0.81. So Boston was the better half-court team in Boston. They've continued to be the better half-court team here in Milwaukee. What does that mean? What that means to me is that's how this series is going to be determined. Boston has demonstrated that is a replicable skill to be the better team in the half court. Not because Giannis is the best player in the series. He's also probably the best half court creator in the series. But Boston has far more players on the floor at any given moment that can dribble, drive, pass, and shoot. And that combination makes them much harder to guard. Milwaukee has some more traditional spot-up guys that aren't great at attacking closeouts and things along those lines. So much more is on Giannis and Jrue Holiday's plate to create shots. Boston doesn't have that problem because they have more offensive talent surrounding Jason Tatum, right? But this is how this series is going to be determined. If Boston takes smart shots and can stay in the half court, they will win. If they continue to get wrapped up in poor decision-making, quick 3-point shots off the dribble, just overall sloppy offense, they will continue to let Milwaukee get out in transition, and they will lose. You know, I picked Boston to win this series in 5, but the reason why this is up in the air is Boston has killed themselves in 2 of these games in transition. That's where this thing has been. That's where this series has swung. And the issue is that's controllable if you're Boston. That's just take care of the basketball. Make smart decisions. Don't get rushed. Those kinds of things. But if you're Milwaukee, the way that you win this series is you run at all costs. Push on every possible possession. Because in the half court, you are not scoring against this Boston defense. You know, Giannis, and I mean this as a compliment to him, I think Giannis is on a tier by himself at the top of the league. I think this reminds me of LeBron circa 2013, where it appears that there's a definitive gap between LeBron and the next guy. I thought LeBron was the best player in the world from 2012 to 2020, without interruption. But right around 2014 when KD rose, and then obviously in 2015 when Steph rose, it got close. And obviously, even though I thought LeBron was better than those guys, I thought they were kind of in the same tier as him. On any given night, they were capable of outplaying him, right? With Giannis, it kind of feels like the way it did with LeBron in those first couple of years when he was at the top of the league, where it's like, who is the second best guy? Is it Kobe? I mean, yeah, but Kobe was nowhere near as good as LeBron in 2013. Was it, KD? Yeah, but he's a baby. He's not quite developed yet. For Giannis, it's a different dynamic because he's kind of fending off guys that are established, guys like KD and LeBron and Steph, right? But Giannis is in a tier by himself at the top of the league right now. We have to just acknowledge that based on what we're seeing on the floor. The interesting thing is Boston is still having a massive impact on him. Boston has held him to 15% below his regular season true shooting percentage. He's shooting 48.9% in true shooting in this series. That's insane. Now, true shooting is just literally your field goal percentage, but weighted with 3-point shots and free throws. That's all it is. But it's incredibly impressive what Boston's done to him. That said, he's been able to impact the game a ton just with his relentless attacking of the rim and his playmaking and his defense. He's averaging 31, 11, and 9 in this series, which is insane. Obviously not efficient, but he's putting up the impact metrics. And as I have said, credit Boston for the lack of efficiency. If they did it to KD, they were obviously going to do it to Giannis. They're the best defensive team of this era. I've said that many times. And it was really, it honestly was kind of nice to hear JJ Redick and Tim Legler say the same thing on the pod that they did the other day, because obviously those guys have a lot more credibility than I do because they've been around for a long time. They're established. But guys, I wasn't saying that for poops and giggles. I'm literally a guy who covered the Lakers for the last 2 years. All my Twitter followers, for the most part, are Lakers fans. I don't stand to gain anything by advocating for the Celtics. But what I do, guys, is I put in the work. I watch a shit ton of tape. I watch almost every game twice. Okay? And when I was digging into the tape and when I was digging into the numbers, we are seeing things from this Boston defense that we have never seen before from any other team in recent NBA history. Okay? So I'm just acknowledging what I'm seeing with my eyes. That's why Boston was a minus 200 favorite before the series. To Giannis's credit, he has been so great that he has overcome that to the extent that he's been able to pull out a couple of games. It actually kind of reminds me of LeBron in the 2015 finals against Golden State. Them taking a 2-1 lead on the strength of greatness from LeBron, or in this case, Giannis, inefficiently. Remember, LeBron was horribly inefficient in that series because Golden State was loading up on him. Giannis is dealing with the same thing now, but eventually the better team that consistently gets better shots is going to take over. And that's what I think is going to happen in this series. I think Boston is going to win Game 4 tomorrow. I think they're going to win. I think it'll be a relatively close game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Boston won by 10, 15 points. And then I think they're going to go home and win Game 5 in Boston in front of their home crowd, win big. I think they'll win. I think they'll have control of that game. And then I think they're going to go into Game 6 in Milwaukee, and that all of the offensive things that Boston will have figured out, I think they will have taken hold, and I think they'll be consistent there, and I think they'll be able to go on the road and win a game there. I think Boston wins the series in 6. I know people think I'm crazy, but I'm just paying attention to what I'm seeing in the numbers. I'm paying attention to what I'm seeing in the film, and I'm trusting that. I am also not stupid enough to think that Giannis isn't capable of overcoming that. Of course he is. LeBron damn near did it in 2015. He went in Game 5 in Golden State and had another crazy, 46-point game or something, and it just wasn't quite enough. And maybe Giannis is capable of that. One of my friends, Damon Rangula, was talking on Twitter yesterday about how, Giannis might have to average 50 to win this series. And he's right. He might literally have to average 50. But he's also capable of that. That's not out of the realm of possibility. That's just what he's going to have to do. Giannis is going to have to put up otherworldly performances down the stretch of this series to win. He just also might be capable of doing it. I just am still picking Boston at this point.